On July 31st, 1970, thousands of British sailors stood silently on the decks of Royal Navy ships around the world. Some wore black armbands, some held mock funerals. A few even placed a small coffin on deck before lowering it in a symbolic ceremony. Then, at precisely noon, they raised tiny glasses together and drank. It was not a celebration, it was a funeral. For more than 3 centuries, British sailors had received a daily ration of rum from their government. Generation after generation had lived by a familiar command: up spirits. Every afternoon, barrels were opened, the rum was measured. Each sailor received his share. It survived wars. It survived revolutions. It survived the rise and fall of the British Empire itself. Then, in a single day, it ended. To outsiders, the reaction seemed almost unbelievable. Why would grown men mourn the loss of a drink? Because rum had never been just a drink. It was pay, it was medicine, it was currency, it was morale, it was discipline. And long before it became associated with tropical beaches and colorful cocktails, rum helped build one of the largest trading systems in human history. Its story is filled with wealth, but also unimaginable suffering. It helped finance empires. It fueled revolutions, it created fortunes, it destroyed countless lives, and perhaps most surprisingly, it all began with something people once considered worthless: molasses. Today, molasses is simply another product on a grocery store shelf: dark, sticky, sweet. But 400 years ago, plantation owners saw it as little more than industrial waste. To understand why, we have to travel back to the Caribbean during the early 17th century. European powers had discovered something extraordinary. Sugarcane flourished in the tropical climate. Barbados, Jamaica, St. Kitts, Martinique. Across the Caribbean, fields of sugarcane stretched toward the horizon. Demand for sugar exploded throughout Europe. Once considered a luxury reserved for kings and nobles, sugar slowly became available to ordinary people. Tea, coffee, chocolate, all became sweeter, and every spoonful increased demand even further. Producing sugar, however, was exhausting work. The cane had to be harvested quickly before it dried. Workers crushed the stalks between heavy rollers. The juice was boiled repeatedly until crystals finally formed. Those crystals became sugar. But after every batch, something remained. A thick, black liquid, sticky, heavy, almost impossible to use: molasses. Most plantation owners had no interest in it. Some dumped it into the sea, others poured it into ditches. Some fed small amounts to livestock. Very few imagined it could become valuable. But among the enslaved Africans forced to work these plantations, something remarkable was quietly taking place. Many came from regions with long traditions of fermentation. They noticed that when molasses mixed with water, something happened. Given enough warmth, natural yeast transformed the sugary liquid into alcohol. Someone, history never recorded exactly who, eventually took the next step. The fermented molasses was distilled. The result was powerful, harsh, burning, unlike anything Europeans had tasted before. Early writers described it as terrible, fiery, even devilish. One early nickname became Kill Devil. Another was Rumbullion, meaning a great uproar or disturbance. Over time, the name simply became rum. No one involved in those first experiments could have imagined what they had created. A discarded waste product had suddenly become one of the world's most profitable commodities. Plantation owners quickly noticed something important. The sugar had already paid for the harvest. Molasses cost almost nothing. Turning it into rum required relatively little additional expense. Every barrel represented enormous profit. Within only a few decades, distilleries appeared across the Caribbean. Production expanded rapidly. Ships arrived carrying empty barrels. They departed filled with rum. Demand spread far beyond the islands. Sailors embraced it. Merchants traded it. Colonists drank it. Governments taxed it. What began as agricultural waste quietly became international commerce. But commerce rarely remains simple. As rum production increased, another system grew alongside it, one far darker, one that transformed the Atlantic Ocean into the center of a vast economic machine. Historians now call it the triangular trade. Imagine a giant triangle stretching across the Atlantic. One corner stood in Europe and North America, another in West Africa, the third across the Caribbean and the American colonies. Ships rarely traveled empty. Every voyage carried cargo. Rum left ports like Boston, Newport, and Bristol. It crossed the Atlantic toward West Africa. There, merchants exchanged rum, textiles, metal goods, and firearms for enslaved human beings captured through warfare, raids, or local trading networks. Those men, women, and children were then forced aboard slave ships, bound, crowded, denied freedom, denied dignity, denied even the certainty of survival. The journey across the Atlantic became known as the Middle Passage. It remains one of history's greatest human tragedies. Conditions aboard these ships were horrific. People were packed tightly together below deck. Disease spread rapidly. Food and water remained scarce. Many never survived the crossing. Historians estimate millions died before ever reaching land. Those who survived were sold into slavery throughout the Caribbean and the Americas. Many worked on sugar plantations, growing more cane, producing more sugar, creating more molasses. That molasses then returned across the Atlantic to North American distilleries, where it became rum. The circle began again. Rum wasn't simply connected to slavery, it helped finance it. Barrels of rum often functioned as currency. Merchants calculated prices, negotiated exchanges, recorded transactions. Gallons of rum appeared beside human lives in business ledgers. Today, those surviving records remain deeply disturbing. They reveal something uncomfortable. Ordinary commercial transactions help sustain extraordinary cruelty. Many people buying rum in colonial taverns never saw the plantations, never witnessed the slave ships, never observed the suffering hidden behind every barrel. They simply purchased another drink. The system remained invisible. That invisibility made it powerful. By the early 18th century, New England had become one of the largest rum-producing regions in the world. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut. Hundreds of distilleries operated throughout the colonies. Some historians estimate that Rhode Island alone eventually produced millions of gallons annually. Rum became the colony's largest manufactured export. Entire port cities prospered. Shipbuilders, coopers making barrels, merchants, dock workers, insurance companies, banks. Many industries quietly benefited. The wealth generated through rum reached far beyond the distilleries themselves. Even families with no direct connection to slavery sometimes profited indirectly through trade. History often works this way. Economic systems spread benefits unevenly while hiding their human costs. Perhaps nowhere was this clearer than Boston. Today, visitors admire its historic streets, its revolutionary landmarks, its colonial architecture. Few realize that rum once flowed through its docks almost constantly. Warehouses filled with molasses, distilleries filled with copper stills, ships loading barrels bound for distant markets. Rum helped shape the economy that later supported many early American industries. Then something unexpected happened. Britain decided it wanted a larger share of those profits. In 1733, Parliament passed the Molasses Act. The law placed heavy duties on molasses imported from French and Dutch Caribbean colonies. British lawmakers hoped American colonists would purchase only British molasses instead. The idea seems simple: protect British plantations, increase tax revenue, strengthen imperial trade. Instead, it created enormous anger. American distillers relied heavily on cheaper foreign molasses. Suddenly, their businesses faced serious financial pressure. Many ignored the law entirely. Smuggling increased. Bribery became common. Merchants found countless creative ways around customs officials. Others demanded political change. Taxes on molasses soon became about far more than sugar. They became symbols of control. Future American leaders noticed. Among them was John Adams. Years later, Adams argued that disputes over molasses taxes helped plant the earliest seeds of colonial resistance. Long before tea became famous, molasses had already become political. The Boston Tea Party would eventually capture history's imagination. But years earlier, rum had already begun reshaping relations between Britain and its American colonies. Economic pressure slowly became political resistance. Political resistance gradually became revolution. Few schoolbooks emphasize that connection today. Yet without sugar, without molasses, without rum, the path toward American independence might have unfolded very differently. History often hides its turning points inside ordinary products: tea, salt, bread, or in this case, a drink made from discarded molasses. And while rum was helping reshape the future of North America, across the Caribbean, it was becoming the drink most closely associated with another group whose reputation has only grown larger with time: pirates. Not because Hollywood imagined it, but because life at sea made rum one of the most practical drinks available. In Part 2, we'll uncover why pirates trusted rum more than water, reveal how it became official government pay for the British Royal Navy, discover the astonishing true story behind Black Tot Day, and explore how one simple drink influenced piracy, naval warfare, and the rise of the British Empire itself. Before we continue, I'd love to hear from you. Before watching this, did you know rum was once made from what people considered waste? Let me know in the comments. I read every one, and I'd love to hear which part of this story has surprised you the most so far. By the beginning of the 18th century, rum had become one of the most valuable products crossing the Atlantic. Merchants depended on it. Governments taxed it. Plantation owners profited from it. But no group embraced rum quite like the men who spent their lives at sea. For one very simple reason: fresh water was often more dangerous than alcohol. Today that sounds almost impossible. Water is supposed to be the safest drink available. But aboard a wooden sailing ship crossing the Atlantic 300 years ago, clean drinking water was a constant challenge. Ships sometimes remained at sea for months. Fresh water was stored inside wooden barrels. At first it tasted perfectly normal. Then, as the weeks passed, the problems began. Algae formed inside the barrels. Bacteria multiplied. Wood leaked tiny particles into the water. The tropical heat accelerated everything. Before long, the water became cloudy, then foul-smelling, eventually almost undrinkable. Sailors often described old water as tasting like rotten wood mixed with stagnant swamp. Yet they had little choice. Beer offered one solution. Because it contained alcohol, beer generally lasted longer than plain water. For centuries, many European navies supplied beer to their crews. But beer created another problem. It spoiled much faster in tropical climates. Large quantities occupied enormous storage space, and after long voyages, even beer turned sour. Rum changed everything. Unlike water, it did not spoil. Unlike beer, it remained stable in hot climates. Unlike wine, it was relatively inexpensive throughout the Caribbean. It also occupied less space because of its higher alcohol content. For sailors crossing the Atlantic, rum quickly became one of the most practical beverages aboard ship. Of course, sailors rarely drank pure rum all day. The alcohol content was far too strong. Instead, many mixed it with water. This diluted the alcohol while making questionable water somewhat safer to consume. The mixture eventually became known as grog. In 1740, British Admiral Edward Vernon ordered that sailors dilute their daily rum ration with water. Vernon frequently wore a cloak made from grogram cloth. His crews nicknamed him Old Grog. The drink inherited his nickname. Grog quickly became standard throughout the Royal Navy. Some sailors disliked the weaker mixture. Others appreciated receiving larger volumes of drink throughout the day. More importantly, the Navy appreciated something else. Discipline improved, drunkenness declined, and crews remained healthier during long voyages. What had begun as a practical solution gradually became official government policy. Every day around noon, a familiar order echoed across British warships. "Up spirits!" Immediately, sailors lined up. The ship's cooper unlocked the rum cask. The purser carefully measured each ration. Every man received exactly the amount authorized by the Admiralty. Nothing happened by chance. Everything was recorded. Everything was supervised. Rum wasn't simply entertainment. It became part of military logistics, part of official pay, part of daily routine. Generation after generation experienced exactly the same ceremony. The tradition lasted so long that countless sailors could scarcely imagine naval life without it. Many historians argue that the daily rum ration represented something larger than alcohol itself. It symbolized fairness. Every sailor received the same measure. From experienced veterans to newly recruited seamen, Everyone stood in the same line. Everyone waited for the same cup. Shared hardship often creates powerful traditions. Rum became one of them. While disciplined naval crews followed carefully measured rations, another group roaming the Caribbean followed no rules at all: pirates. Modern movies portray pirates constantly waving bottles of rum while shouting across tropical beaches. As usual, reality proves both more ordinary and more fascinating. Pirates certainly drank rum, but not because they sought adventure. They drank it because they lived under the same practical conditions as every other sailor. Water spoiled, rum didn't. Captured merchant ships often carried barrels of rum as cargo. When pirates seized those vessels, they inherited the supplies. Alcohol also eased another burden. Life aboard pirate ships remained brutally difficult. Storms, disease, injuries, constant danger. Rum offered temporary escape from harsh realities. It also served as celebration after successful raids. Few pirate captains became more famous than Edward Teach. History remembers him simply as Blackbeard. Standing well over 6 feet tall, he carefully cultivated a terrifying reputation. Before battle, he tucked slow-burning fuses beneath his broad hat and into his thick black beard. As smoke curled around his face, frightened opponents often believed something supernatural approached them. Many surrendered immediately. Blackbeard understood an important truth. Fear often won battles before cannon ever fired. His terrifying appearance became one of history's earliest psychological weapons. Interestingly, modern historians believe Blackbeard killed far fewer people than his legend suggests. Intimidation proved far more profitable than unnecessary violence. A surrendered merchant ship remained undamaged. Its cargo remained intact. Its crew often survived. Business continued. Piracy, despite its chaotic reputation, frequently depended upon careful economic calculation. Rum played its role throughout: captured cargo, shared celebrations, daily survival. Everything revolved around the realities of life at sea. Blackbeard's remarkable career ended in 1718. British naval officer Robert Maynard finally cornered him off the coast of North Carolina. The battle became legendary. According to eyewitness accounts, Blackbeard absorbed multiple gunshot wounds and numerous sword strikes before finally collapsing. His severed head was displayed from Maynard's ship as proof the notorious pirate had finally been defeated. Yet even Blackbeard's extraordinary story pales beside another remarkable tale connecting rum to the Royal Navy. This one involves Britain's greatest naval hero, Admiral Horatio Nelson. On October 21, 1805, the Battle of Trafalgar changed European history. The British fleet defeated the combined French and Spanish navies. Napoleon's hopes of invading Britain disappeared forever. Victory came at enormous cost. During the battle, a French sharpshooter struck Admiral Nelson. Mortally wounded, he survived just long enough to learn that Britain had won. His final victory secured Britain's naval dominance for generations. Now another challenge appeared. How could Nelson's body survive the long voyage home? Refrigeration did not exist. The journey back to England would require weeks. The ship's surgeon made an unusual decision. Nelson's body was placed inside a large cask filled with strong spirits to preserve it. Popular legend insists the barrel contained rum. Historical records more commonly suggest brandy. Regardless of which spirit was used, the story quickly spread throughout the Navy. According to one famous legend, curious sailors secretly drilled small holes into the barrel during the voyage and drank from it. Whether true or not, the tale became inseparable from naval folklore. Dark rum eventually earned an unusual nickname, Nelson's Blood. Even today, many sailors and historians recognize the expression. The legend reveals something important. Rum had become woven into naval identity itself, not simply as a beverage, but as tradition, as memory, as culture. Perhaps no event demonstrates that better than July 31, 1970. By the 20th century, naval warfare had changed dramatically. Steel warships replaced wooden sailing vessels, radar replaced lookout towers, missiles replaced cannons. Some ships even carried nuclear weapons. Military leaders faced an obvious question. Should sailors operating increasingly sophisticated equipment continue receiving alcohol every day? The answer eventually became clear. The Admiralty abolished the daily rum ration. After 315 years, the tradition ended. The date quickly became known throughout the Royal Navy as Black Tot Day. The scenes that followed surprised many outsiders. Sailors assembled in silence. Some wore black armbands, others lowered symbolic coffins. Many raised one final ration together. Some even poured part of it into the sea. The ceremony resembled a funeral more than a policy change, because something much larger than alcohol had disappeared. An unbroken tradition stretching across centuries, connecting generations, linking wooden sailing ships to modern destroyers. Very few military customs survive 300 years. This one did, until modern technology finally made it obsolete. Yet rum's influence on history still wasn't finished. Even after pirates disappeared, even after empires changed, even after naval traditions faded, rum found itself at the center of another extraordinary chapter. This time, not on the high seas, but inside American cities during one of the most controversial experiments in modern history: Prohibition. When the United States banned alcohol in 1920, lawmakers believed drinking would decline. Instead, smuggling exploded. The Caribbean suddenly became one of America's largest suppliers of illegal liquor. Fast boats crossed from the Bahamas, Cuba, Jamaica, their holds filled with rum. Under cover of darkness, they raced toward Florida and the American coastline. Rum runners earned fortunes. Organized crime expanded rapidly. Speakeasies flourished. Ironically, the attempt to eliminate alcohol transformed rum from a working-class drink into one of the most fashionable ingredients in cocktail culture. Many famous tropical drinks that people associate with vacations today owe their popularity to those years of smuggling and secrecy. History has a strange sense of irony. Again and again, attempts to control rum only seem to increase its influence. Yet perhaps the most remarkable chapter still remained, because in the 20th century, one Cuban family would lose nearly everything they owned, only to rebuild one of the world's most famous rum empires from exile. And their story would become tangled in revolution, Cold War politics, and one of the longest trademark battles in modern business history. Before we continue, I'd love to hear from you. Which surprised you more? The fact that British sailors received rum as part of their official government pay for over 300 years? Or that pirates often drank rum because it was safer than stored water? Share your answer in the comments. I read every one, and I'd love to know which part of rum's history amazed you the most. In the middle of the 20th century, rum had already survived slavery, empire, piracy, revolution, and prohibition. But history wasn't finished with it yet. In 1862, a Spanish immigrant named Facundo Bacardí Massó founded a small distillery in Santiago de Cuba. Instead of producing the harsh rum people were used to, he experimented with charcoal filtration, carefully selected yeast, and slow aging. The result was smoother, lighter, and unlike anything the world had tasted before. Over the next century, Bacardí became one of the largest rum producers on Earth. Then, everything changed. In 1960, following the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro's government nationalized private businesses across the country. Bacardí's distilleries, warehouses, and equipment were seized by the state, but the family had prepared. Long before the confiscation, they had quietly moved their secret yeast strains, master blenders, recipes, and key employees out of Cuba. Those invisible assets proved more valuable than the buildings themselves. The company rebuilt in the Bahamas, Puerto Rico, and eventually Bermuda. Meanwhile, Cuba continued producing its own rum under new brands, leading to trademark battles that continue even today. It is remarkable that a drink once made from discarded molasses could shape so many chapters of world history. Rum financed the Atlantic slave trade. It helped fuel the American Revolution. It sustained the world's most powerful navy for over 3 centuries. It enriched smugglers during Prohibition. And it became entangled in Cold War politics that still echo today. Perhaps the greatest lesson is this: most people believe history is shaped only by kings, presidents, and famous generals. But sometimes, history turns on something as ordinary as a barrel of molasses. A product once thrown away became the foundation of fortunes, empires, revolutions, and global trade. Behind every bottle of rum lies a story far larger than the drink itself. A story of innovation, exploitation, resilience, and the hidden forces that shaped the modern world. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Before watching this series, which part of rum's history surprised you the most? The connection to slavery, the American Revolution, the Royal Navy, or the Cuban Revolution? Share your answer in the comments below. I read every comment, and I'd love to know what fascinated you most. If you enjoy uncovering the forgotten history behind everyday objects, foods, and traditions, don't forget to subscribe. There are many more remarkable stories hidden in plain sight, and I can't wait to explore them with you.